So in this video, we're going to discuss some very important basics, namely, what is trauma and what can fall under that umbrella. So to start, to know that so many people, particularly in their childhood, experience a form of trauma. And then it takes a lifetime sometimes to untangle from that, to make sense from that, and heal from that. And it could fall into two main broad categories. One category is sort of more overt kind of trauma. You might think about that as physical trauma or, unfortunately, sexual abuse. So if someone's able to remember that, themselves going through that, they might associate that, yes, I went through trauma because I was physically, abused or sexually abused. And that, of course, is true and needs to be addressed and healed. But something I want to stress in today's video is that sometimes the trauma can be more subtle, not so overt like that, but still be really challenging and still can be considered a trauma as well for the client, and really needs sensitivity and really deep and effective work. And some of these more subtle traumas can be things like neglect. What if a child's just left alone to fend for themselves and figure out the world, and when they're going through hardships or difficult emotions, they're not being guided or supported the way they need to be? What if they're constantly being shamed or criticized, so it's not a supportive or loving environment? These are abusive, emotionally abusive things and traumatic things. And the reason why I'm using the word traumatic, because a child needs to learn through survival how to function in such an environment. They have to figure out a way to survive. So if they're being in an environment where they're very frequently being put down, where there's a lot of harsh criticism, where they're being shamed when they make mistakes, where there's not a compassionate, understanding environment, their emotions and mind and brain will have to adjust itself to survive and work through such a world. And that ends up having negative impact for them and could be quite challenging as they're trying to move on in their life in terms of how they relate to themselves and how they relate to others. So even if at first in such a situation someone is unsure to say, is it true that I really went through trauma? What I wanted you to take from this video is that can definitely be considered that. Let me give you some more examples. Sometimes parentification, that means a child who's given a parent role, so they can't anymore just be a free child having a childhood, but they're having immense inappropriate amount of responsibility to maybe have to take care of their parents or have to take care of their siblings. That's called parentification, and that can be a form of trauma as well. Likewise, poor boundaries. If parents are sort of making the child support them, or a parent who's narcissistic and, so to speak, making the child be there for them instead of the child be there for the parent. These are all things that are a little more subtle and can lead to, as we were saying before, these difficulties in childhood that then we have to learn how to heal from. The last point I want to make in this video is that what's called correct parenting is really correct attunement. So that means a parent who's able to attune to their child's needs. So think about a baby who's crying and a mom or a caregiver who's able to get to the child's level and deal with it emotionally and energetically in a way that will actually soothe the baby and make the baby feel heard and make the baby feel safe. And likewise, as the child gets older, maybe they're feeling something emotional, maybe they're feeling sad, maybe they're feeling scared. And a parent who's able to attune to that and be there for their child and somehow make the child feel heard, make the child feel accepted, make the child feel understood and soothed, that's the correct parenting. So many times when there's ruptures in that, where there's not the right attunement, either as a very young age as a child, the mom isn't able to be present, to really care for the child in that way, to make it feel soothed and make it feel safe. Or as it gets older, there's no time or capacity for the parent to do that. These things can lead to these early life ruptures and in a way can be categorized as childhood trauma. And then it's so important to get the support on that. The point I'll end with is sometimes when people look back on their childhoods, they know their parents maybe didn't have bad intent. But it still can be true that even though the parents did their best, they still might have come short. And the child might have been left with now these issues that they have to work through. So sometimes parents are just doing the best they can, but it can still lead to damage and some trauma in their child that now, because they were getting all this criticism or not the right attunement. So take a minute to think about all these things, how there can be more obvious traumas and more subtle traumas, and traumas that relate through a lack of attunement. And also the fact that sometimes our parents are doing the best job that they could have done, but still left us with some pain and issues that we have to work through later in life. And it's okay to name that. And that's actually part of the healing. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that one. I look forward to joining with you on more videos on this trauma healing series.